The police report said the hikers called it in at 6:42 a.m., a cold March morning, visibility near zero. They'd followed an overgrown path off the main trail near the edge of Black Hollow, a place most locals avoided long before 1991. What they found didn't make the papers that week. In fact, it would be another 7 days before the public even knew there had been a discovery at all. Officers at the scene later described the ground as disturbed. That was the official word. But the footage from that day, footage that was quietly locked away in an evidence vault for more than 30 years, tells a different story. The first image shows a clearing no larger than a living room, framed by birch trees stripped bare from winter. In the center, a shallow pit, 6 feet across, water pooling at the base. On the left side, what looks like stone fragments arranged in a pattern, almost deliberate. On the right, a dark mound, half submerged in mud. When the camera zooms in, you can see it clearly. A human hand, pale and rigid, the fingers pressed into the soil as if reaching upward. The officer operating the camera breathes out sharply, and the frame shakes. You can hear another voice in the background, low, urgent, telling him to stop recording. The tape ends there. For the next 3 decades, no one outside a small circle of investigators was meant to see what that pit contained. No one was meant to hear the audio that followed, the whispers caught on tape, the rhythmic sounds buried beneath the static. But everything hidden eventually comes back. Every secret finds a way out. And when the case files were quietly unsealed last year, what emerged wasn't just evidence of murder. It was evidence of ritual, of something practiced, repeated, and preserved beneath the soil of an English countryside few have ever heard of. The story you're about to hear has no clear ending, no convicted killer, and no single explanation that fits. Yet the names, dates, and police records you'll see tonight are all real. The photographs you'll see are drawn directly from archived footage recovered from the original investigation. 34 years later, Black Hollow remains abandoned, a hollow name on forgotten maps. But the events that took place there in the spring of 1991 continue to echo through witness statements, hidden journals, and one final recording that was never supposed to exist. This is that story. This is the record of what the public was never meant to hear. The official record describes them as 2 male hikers, both in their late 30s, experienced with the terrain. Their names were Gareth Linton and Thomas Price, residents of Exeter. Both men were taking part in a charity walk across North Devon that morning, following a route that, according to the event guide, should have never brought them near Black Hollow. But they did. At 6:41 a.m., Price radioed the local rescue channel, stating they'd found something that looked like an old well in a clearing east of the woods. The transmission was short, 31 seconds, before it cut off. By the time officers arrived, both men were standing by their discovery, silent, visibly shaken. Photographs from the first responders show frost clinging to their jackets, faces pale, eyes fixed on the pit. When interviewed later, neither could fully describe what they'd seen first. Linton's exact words were, "It looked arranged, like someone meant for it to be found." Police secured the area within the hour. Officers stretched tape between the trees, markers driven into the soil. Locals who lived along the nearby road told reporters they'd seen blue lights through the fog, but assumed there had been another accident. Another drunk driver lost in the back roads. No one was prepared for what the team uncovered beneath the mud. The pit was measured at roughly 6 feet wide and 4 feet deep. Its edges were unnaturally smooth, as though dug with purpose. Within the first layer of soil, officers recovered 7 fragments of bone, all belonging to different individuals. Each fragment had been cut cleanly, as if by a blade rather than time or erosion. Beneath that layer lay something else, a wooden framework, arranged in a perfect circle. Its center held a shallow bowl carved from stone, containing remnants of melted wax and traces of dried blood, confirmed later by forensic testing. One officer later wrote in his statement that the smell was wrong. Not of decay, but something stale, like metal and damp wood. Another noted that no insects were present, no movement in the air, as if the clearing itself had been sealed off from life. At precisely 9:12 a.m., police cordoned off the site entirely. The names of the 2 hikers were withheld from early press coverage, replaced with the phrase "civilian witnesses." The photographs taken that morning were entered into evidence under Case ID BH9101, the first official file in what would soon become the largest rural investigation in Devon's history. Yet, for all the official documentation, one detail never appeared in any of the public records. During cleanup later that afternoon, a junior officer named Ellis Ward reported finding a second pit, smaller, about 2 feet deep, less than 20 yards from the first. Inside was a small wooden box, sealed shut with wax. The logbook entry simply reads, "Recovered object, 11:36 a.m., transferred to evidence." No one ever saw the contents listed again. The box disappears from all subsequent inventories. No photographs, no item code, nothing. In interviews years later, Ellis said only this: "It wasn't empty. I know that much. They told me to forget I found it." Brief pause, faint static, sound of an old tape being rewound. The police presence in Black Hollow grew over the next 48 hours. Crime scene tents went up, generators hummed through the night, and helicopters scanned the moors for signs of additional burial sites. But locals say that even as the area filled with lights and engines, the woods themselves stayed unnervingly quiet. No birds, no wind through the branches, just the dull hum of machines and the sound of boots crunching over soil that had been disturbed long before the police arrived. By the 3rd day, investigators had unearthed 12 sets of remains in total, all dismembered, all marked with identical carvings along the bone. The carvings formed a repeating pattern, something geometric, like an old emblem. Experts from London were brought in to examine the symbols. Their findings were brief: non-random incision, suggestive of ritual practice. The press never saw that line. It was redacted before the report went public. And yet, one photograph survived the edits. Taken from above, under floodlight, a circle of stones, bones arranged between them, and a single marking drawn into the mud. A spiral intersected by a cross. The symbol would appear again, months later, on the door of the village church. But that part of the story belongs to the next chapter, when the investigation into Black Hollow began to unravel from the inside. Black Hollow was never marked on any tourist map. Even before 1991, the name appeared only on old survey records. A collection of cottages, a single road that stopped at the woods, and a church that had long since lost its congregation. By the late 1980s, only 11 people were recorded as living there. Most were older, shepherds, widows, and the last of the miners who'd stayed after the collapse of the ironworks decades earlier. The youngest resident was a woman named Anna Croft, 27 years old. She ran the post office from the front of her home. The last mail was sent from her building in January of 1991, 2 months before the pit was discovered. In interviews conducted years later, neighboring villages spoke of Black Hollow as a place that simply stopped existing. Not abandoned, not destroyed, just stopped. The road became overgrown, the houses were boarded up, roofs sinking inward, windows clouded with mold. Only the stone church remained intact, its foundation older than the rest, the bell still hanging, though no one could recall hearing it ring. When investigators from Devon Police began canvassing nearby residents, the same pattern emerged in every testimony. People didn't move away from Black Hollow. They disappeared. Records showed their taxes unpaid, vehicles left behind, doors locked from the inside. One farmhouse still had breakfast plates on the table, cups stained with tea, chairs pulled out as if someone had stood up mid-meal and never returned. A retired miner, William North, was the last known person to visit the village before it was sealed off. He told officers he'd gone to retrieve an old tool chest left behind in a barn on the edge of the hollow. His statement, given weeks after the discovery, describes something few could explain. The air was heavy, he said. Felt like walking underwater. I didn't hear my own footsteps. Not even the crows made a sound. Then I saw the church door. It was open, just slightly. I called out, no answer. Inside, I swear it looked as if someone had been there the night before. Candles melted down to the holders, wax still soft. But no heat. None. The candles, the investigator later noted, were arranged in a circle, identical spacing, identical height. Each wick blackened, as though burned for hours, yet untouched by time or dust. No photographs were ever released of that scene. But there's one mention of it in the internal report, filed by the lead investigator. Pattern consistent with subsequent findings at Site B. Site B was the code name for the pit. The records that remain from Black Hollow date back to 1864. In those, the name appears frequently, listed under a property once owned by the Church of St. Helena, an establishment later absorbed into the larger diocese. The documents mention an older foundation, something referred to only as the shrine beneath. Historians who reviewed the papers years later found no evidence of a registered shrine anywhere in the parish. But one passage, handwritten in the margin, reads, "Old ground, do not disturb." When drone footage of the area was first released to journalists in 2019, it revealed something no one had previously documented: a network of narrow trenches circling the village in precise geometric patterns, visible only from the air. Locals who saw the images immediately recognized the shape. They said it looked like the symbol carved into the bones found at the pit. The spiral crossed through the center. The trenches weren't natural. They'd been cut with intention, following lines that connected the old church, the well, and the remains of 3 collapsed cottages. Experts suggested it might have been part of an early drainage system. Others, particularly those who worked the mines in the 1960s, disagreed. They said the soil there was too dense, too rocky to carve without machinery. They believed the trenches were older, carved by hand, long before the mine existed. When the 1991 investigation began expanding into the village proper, officers described feeling disoriented, lightheaded, and confused about direction. The compass needles spun erratically. Radio signals dropped entirely within 50 meters of the church grounds. A member of the forensic team later claimed that when they tried to dig near the churchyard, their equipment jammed. The soil was hard as concrete until night fell. By morning, the hole they'd managed to dig was gone, filled back in, smooth and undisturbed. No footprints, no sign of rain. There's no record of when Black Hollow was first built, or who founded it. Parish. Notes from 1892 describe it as a settlement upon older ground, and a census from 1901 lists 39 residents. But only 25 graves have ever been found in the churchyard. The others, as the lead coroner later stated, were unaccounted for. As the investigation deepened, the village itself became an archive, every structure, every surface carrying signs of repetition, as if the same acts had been performed over and over again across generations. In one cottage, investigators found dozens of carved symbols etched into the underside of a wooden floorboard. A child's handwriting on the wall nearby read, "He watches from the hollow." The handwriting was dated 1974. The child's name, Edwin Croft, appears again 18 years later in a missing persons report, filed March 5, 1991, 6 days before the hikers found the pit. That discovery linked the present to a pattern no one wanted to acknowledge. The Croft family had lived at the edge of Black Hollow for over a century. The last letter ever posted from Anna Croft's office, recovered unopened, contained a single sheet of paper. No words, only that same symbol drawn in red ink. For investigators, it was the first sign that what happened in the clearing wasn't isolated. It was connected. Connected to the ground, to the buildings, to the people who vanished without a trace. And as the days passed, one name began appearing across old diaries, letters, and police statements. A name that none of the locals would speak out loud. A name that surfaced again when the second pit was found. The name was the Warden. What that title meant, no one could say. But in every account, it was written the same way. Capitalized, underlined, as though whoever wrote it wanted to be sure it wasn't mistaken for anything else. The first recorded disappearance linked to the Black Hollow investigation occurred on March 5, 1991. The name on the report, Anna Elizabeth Croft. Officially, she was last seen at approximately 8:20 p.m. Neighbors recalled the light from her post office window, still glowing after dark. When the mail carrier arrived the next morning, the door was unlocked. Her coat remained on the rack. The kettle, still half full, had boiled dry. Police logs show that an officer, P.C. Reynolds, was dispatched at 9:42 a.m. to perform a welfare check. He entered through the front door. His statement, written in uneven script, reads, "No sign of struggle. All windows locked from inside. Mail scattered on counter. Found a set of footprints leading from back door into field. One set only. Barefoot. Partial prints stopped 10 meters from edge of wood. Nothing beyond." Forensics confirmed the prints matched Anna's. She was never seen again. Inside her home, officers found a diary, leather-bound, stored beneath a drawer in her writing desk. Most entries were ordinary: weather notes, mail logs, names of local visitors. But the final 3 entries were different. The handwriting was hurried. The first, dated February 26th, reads, "The sound again tonight, low from the ground, like something breathing beneath the house. Edwin says he feels it through the floorboards." The second, dated March 1st, Saw figures by the tree line. 4, maybe 5. Holding lights. They moved together, then apart, then together again. No voices. Edwin hasn't slept. The final entry, written on March 4th, the day before she vanished. It's under the well. Heard the chain move by itself. Something wet on the stones this morning. It's calling. Says it remembers the blood. For investigators, the diary changed the nature of the case. Until then, the Croft disappearance was treated as a single missing person report, one among hundreds filed each year. But the writing suggested prior knowledge of the area's history, and more disturbingly, a familiarity with the rituals that would later be uncovered in the pits. Officers returned to the Croft home to examine the well mentioned in the diary. The well itself was shallow, 6 feet deep, lined with uneven stones. Water filled halfway, dark and motionless. When the first officer lowered a light, something reflected from below, a piece of metal wedged between the stones. Divers were brought in. The object retrieved was a rusted padlock, engraved with a single letter. W. The corrosion suggested age, decades, not years. Over the following week, police began searching the surrounding properties. Every abandoned cottage within a mile radius was entered, catalogued, photographed. It was during this phase that they uncovered what they later referred to as the children's room. In one of the derelict houses on the edge of the village, believed to have belonged to a family named Kepler, officers found a small bedroom sealed from the inside with nailed boards. Inside, the air was dry, stale, the walls covered with crude drawings done in charcoal, hundreds of them. The same symbol repeated over and over, varying only in size and placement. The spiral with the cross. In the center of the room, a circle of stones. At its center, a child's doll, head missing, body covered in small carvings that mirrored those found on the bones at the pit. Every item in that room was removed, photographed, and sealed in evidence bags. Yet not a single mention of the children's room appears in the official press statements released that year. Then came the second disappearance. Edwin Croft, Anna's 8-year-old son. The boy had been staying with a relative in a nearby village after his mother's disappearance. On March 10th, he was last seen leaving his aunt's home at sunset, telling her he'd heard his mother calling from the field. He was barefoot. When search teams combed the area that night, they found no trace of him. Only a line of small footprints leading halfway down the path to Black Hollow, stopping abruptly as if erased. The pattern was identical to his mother's. For investigators, the case now had 2 missing persons, both from the same family, both last seen heading toward the woods surrounding the pit. That connection was never officially stated in any report, but it changed everything about how the case was handled. The lead investigator, Detective Holt, ordered a ground-penetrating radar scan of the surrounding terrain. The results were inconclusive, but one anomaly stood out: a circular void beneath the village road, roughly 30 feet across. It appeared man-made. Holt ordered an excavation. It would take 5 days to begin. In that window of time, 3 more people vanished: 2 local farmers and a retired teacher named Margaret Flynn, who had been assisting police with historical records. Her notebook, recovered from the church steps, contained a single line written across the last page: "The warden is awake." It was this chain of disappearances, Anna, Edwin, the others, that led investigators to conclude the killings at Black Hollow weren't isolated acts of violence. They were part of something rehearsed, a repetition, a pattern that resurfaced every generation. Though they didn't know it yet, the name Black Hollow had appeared once before in an entirely different investigation. A case closed more than 70 years earlier, nearly forgotten until a single file was reopened in 1992. That file was labeled Hollow Mass, 1919, and what it contained would link 2 centuries of disappearances to the same ground, the same church, and the same name whispered across every diary and testimony. Names Detective Raymond Holt, West Mercia Division, retired 2003. I was assigned to the Croft case the morning after the second disappearance. When the Black Hollow investigation entered its 3rd week, the county had exhausted nearly every available officer. Roads were blocked. Search dogs brought in from as far as Derbyshire. The fields surrounding the Croft property had become trenches of churned mud and tape. But every day ended the same. No trace. Detective Holt was not the department's first choice. He was older, a veteran of the 1978 Woodridge abduction case, but regarded as meticulous, unyielding. His transfer notice was issued March 14, 1991. By that point, 4 people were missing. His first act upon arrival was to request all historical maps of the Black Hollow parish. The request puzzled superiors, but Holt had a reason. He'd read a brief line in an old church archive, a passing reference to the Hollow Mass, 1919. No details, just a name. Something about the phrasing caught him. If it wasn't coincidence, he believed it might explain why the Crofts had vanished without trace. In Holt's own notes, dated March 18th, he wrote, "Area contains 6 unregistered wells, 3 sealed, 1 active. Locals unaware of original purpose. Possible link to pre-Reformation worship sites. Interview local clergy." That single entry began the second phase of the case, the part that was never made public. Holt drove to the Church of St. Oswin, a 13th century structure standing at the edge of the valley. The church had been deconsecrated since 1965, used only for storage and occasional records. Inside, dust coated every surface. The smell of mildew and damp paper filled the air. In a locked cabinet, beneath bundles of baptism records, Holt found a ledger marked Hollow Parish, 1919. Its pages were faded, but several entries mentioned a name that reappeared across all 3 decades of local history: Warden. The earliest entry read, "Warden led final procession, sealed the pit, ordered silence." Below it, a note in different handwriting. "No burial recorded. Ground refused blessing." For Holt, these lines changed the nature of the case. It was no longer a modern investigation. It had roots, deep ones. The next evening, he contacted Dr. Eleanor Shaw, an archaeologist at Birmingham University, specializing in post-war ritual sites. She agreed to examine the ledger and the map. Her analysis, recorded in her 1991 statement, reads, "Pattern of wells and field boundaries suggests a ring. Central point aligns with coordinates of the Croft residence. Such alignments typically indicate ceremonial enclosures dating to early medieval periods. That alignment, 6 wells surrounding a single point, would later be referred to by investigators as the Warden's Ring." On March 21st, Holt authorized a dig within the circle's southern quadrant. The site was a shallow field, long overgrown, once used for grazing. Within hours, the dig team uncovered stones arranged in a perfect arc. Beneath them, fragments of animal bone, a child's toy, and a rusted key. The key bore the same W engraving as the padlock recovered from Anna Croft's well. The official report lists the discovery as items of unknown origin, but Holt's private notes told more. These objects were placed, not discarded. Each stone faced inward. The circle incomplete by one suggests ongoing practice. What disturbed Holt most wasn't the objects themselves. It was what followed that night. The dig site was left under supervision of 2 constables. By morning, both officers were missing. Their radios were found lying beside the trench. The only recorded transmission, at 2:47 a.m., was a single phrase whispered through static. "Someone's in the field." Holt spent the rest of that week sleeping in his car near the site. Locals reported seeing a light moving through the trees after midnight, pale, slow, rhythmic, as if following the path only it could see. No sound accompanied it. No tracks were ever found. You spend long enough with the case like that, you start to realize it's not that people disappear into the hollow, it's that the hollow remembers who's missing. In his final submission before the case was closed, Holt summarized his findings in 3 words: pattern, repetition, ritual. He requested further excavation of the subsurface void detected earlier, the 30-foot chamber beneath the road. The operation began on April 3rd. What they found beneath would end Holt's career, seal the village archives, and erase all official mention of the Black Hollow murders from public record for more than a decade. The excavation of the void beneath the Black Hollow Road began at 7:30 a.m., April 3rd, 1991. The team consisted of 6 officers, 2 geotechnical engineers, and Detective Holt. Officially, the operation was recorded as a structural subsidence inspection. No mention was made of human remains, ritual sites, or disappearances. But the footage, stored on magnetic tape marked BH4A, told a different story. The road surface was cut open in a rectangular trench. Beneath a layer of compacted earth, the drill struck hollow space at a depth of 9 feet. A camera probe was lowered through the gap. What appeared on screen shocked the team. The cavity was not natural. Its walls were lined with carefully placed stones, each engraved with small symbols. The floor was uneven, covered in thick ash mixed with fragments of bone. No complete skeletons were visible, only shards, dust, and shapes too burned to identify. At the far end of the chamber, illuminated by the probe's light, stood a wooden post driven vertically into the ground. Attached to it was a metal plate, rusted but intact, with a single word etched across its surface: Warden. Detective Holt ordered a full entry team. At 2:14 p.m., the first officer descended into the chamber through a reinforced support tunnel. The air was heavy with carbon residue and sulfur, the after scent of something long extinguished. The chamber measured roughly 32 feet in diameter, 12 feet at its deepest point. Every surface, walls, stones, even the ceiling, had been deliberately blackened. Beneath the soot, symbols repeated in perfect pattern. A ring of intersecting crosses, spirals and lines converging toward the central post. Holt's notes described the moment the team realized what they were standing on. Ash not environmental, contains organic residue consistent with human cremation. Layer thickness, approx 3 inches. Estimated remains, multiple. Low whine of wind through open shaft, faint breath sounds. At 3:47 p.m., one of the engineers, Thomas Liddon, uncovered a metal box near the northern wall. It was small, roughly the size of a typewriter case, sealed with corroded hinges. When opened, It contained a stack of photographs, all black and white, water damaged but partially legible. Each showed a line of people standing in a field, hands clasped, facing the same direction. The background matched the slope near the croft property. The first photograph was dated 1919, the second, 1938, the third, 1965. The faces changed, but the formation did not. At the bottom of the box was a fragment of parchment, written in fading ink. The warden chooses 6. One must remain to keep the circle. By evening, the chamber's perimeter had been fully documented. Samples were taken. The material was confirmed to be ash mixed with calcium phosphate, the residue of burnt bone. But what the report didn't include were the sounds recorded during the final hour of the dig. As the last samples were collected, microphones captured a faint rhythmic pattern, 6 knocks, evenly spaced, echoing from the walls. At first, they assumed it was vibration from machinery, until the machinery was shut off, and the knocking continued. Detective Holt's field recording captures his voice at 6:19 p.m. Confirm all engines stopped. No external contact. Source of sound appears internal to structure. Pattern repeats. Increasing volume. Then, after 30 seconds, the sound ceases, followed by something else, a soft exhale captured near the post. The recording ends abruptly. When the tape was reviewed the next morning, the final frame showed the wooden post. The metal plate was gone. The chamber of ash was sealed the next day, all materials confiscated. The official report cited unsafe excavation conditions. Detective Holt was reassigned within the month and placed on medical leave. Within a year, he retired. His colleagues say he stopped speaking about Black Hollow entirely. But in 1997, during an estate clearance, his private journals were found. 216 pages of handwritten notes, photographs, and sketches. On the final page, he had written just one sentence: "The warden keeps count." And for the first time, investigators realized the Black Hollow murders were not simply acts of killing. They were continuations. Each generation, 6 taken, 1 left behind, and every time the count completes, the hollow opens again. After the chamber of ash was sealed, Detective Holt and his team began gathering statements from locals. Many had avoided Black Hollow entirely. Some had lived in the parish for decades. A single tape labeled WT-91-3 contains the earliest interviews. The voices are hesitant, the pauses long, as if the speakers are weighing every word. One woman, Margaret Ellison, age 68, recalled a night in February. "I woke to a light moving through the trees behind the old church. It was soft, not a lantern, and it flickered like the stars had fallen. I thought it was a stray car at first, but then I heard them, children, whispering my name. I didn't call out. I ran." Another witness, Peter Durrant, a retired shepherd, described a different experience. "I was walking the northern path to check on the sheep. A sound came from the clearing, 6 knocks. I counted them. Then the air grew heavier. Felt like I was carrying something I couldn't see. I turned to leave, but my feet wouldn't move. And I saw them, faces in the mist, not quite human, not quite children. I ran." The final witness from that first tape was a man named Harold Fenwick, caretaker of the abandoned Croft property. "I checked on the fields at dusk. The ground looked like it had been walked on. Prints, 6 in a line, like a parade of ghosts. Then a voice called me by name. I've never heard it again, but it spoke from the hollow itself. Several additional tapes, recorded by constables during stakeouts, contained subtle anomalies, faint whispers, barely audible, footsteps that did not match any known personnel. Even the dogs accompanying the officers refused to enter certain parts of the woods. One officer, P.C. Latham, noted in his report, "The trees themselves seem alive. Wind does not pass through them naturally. It feels directed." In total, 15 separate witness statements were collected over a 4-week period. Patterns emerged quickly. 6 knocks or taps, always repeated. Lights moving through the trees, never stationary. Whispered names, often children's voices. Soil disturbances form in circles, arcs, or straight lines leading toward Black Hollow. No one could explain what they saw, and no one wanted to stay to find out. One tape, WT-9112, recorded by a civilian who asked to remain anonymous, included the clearest evidence yet. "I saw them. Figures in a ring. I couldn't see faces, but I counted 6, and one stood apart, watching, waiting. When I blinked, they were gone. The ground was still smoking. I ran." What made these recordings invaluable to the investigation was not only the consistency of the reports, but their connection to past events. Every detail matched the Chamber of Ash. The 6 knocks mirrored the sequence discovered underground. The ring formation repeated the symbol found at the pit and on the bones. The single figure, always one, matched the cryptic phrase found in Holt's recovered journals. "One must remain to keep the circle." Long pause, low wind, faint rustle of leaves, narrator lowers voice. When the tapes were analyzed, some sounds could not be explained by natural phenomena. Acoustic experts concluded that the echo patterns were too precise, too deliberate, to be accidental. Yet no source could be found. Some of the whispers contained words in Old English, dialects no longer spoken, phrases used in early medieval rituals. By the end of the month, Detective Holt had compiled the statements, photographs, and recordings into a single dossier. Its conclusion was cautious, professional, and understated. Events at Black Hollow follow a consistent pattern. Multiple witnesses confirm phenomena consistent with prior recorded disappearances. The sequence of 6 and 1 repeats across all accounts. Recommendation: further investigation into historical ritual activity. Officially, the report was filed and immediately suppressed, but the witnesses themselves never forgot. In later interviews recovered years afterward, many described the same feeling. It was not just watching, it was waiting. Long before the Crofts vanished, before the Chamber of Ash was unearthed, Black Hollow was the site of what the parish records call the Hollow Mass of 1919. The documents survived only in fragments, faded letters, brief police notes, and a single photograph taken by a constable named James Fenton, whose descendants preserved his archives. According to the records, 6 individuals were reported missing in March of 1919, all connected to the small community on the edge of the hollow. The names are listed in the original police ledger: Thomas Ridley, 34 Eleanor Kestrel, 29 Matthew Pritchard, 12 Sarah Dobson, 7 Harold Whitmore, 42 Margaret Lane, 15. The official reports claim the disappearances were unconnected. Missing persons cases, they wrote, possibly travelers lost or misadventures in the woods. Yet a surviving diary, recovered from the Ridley family home in 1922, tells a different story. They come in the night. 6 steps. 1 remains. I saw the light in the trees. It is always waiting. We cannot stop it. The Fenton photograph shows 6 figures standing in a circle in the clearing that would later be called Black Hollow. The image is grainy, but the formation is unmistakable. One figure stands apart, behind the circle, observing the others. The same pattern, repeated 72 years later. Historical researchers noted that the hollow mass occurred during a period of post-war unrest. Britain was recovering from the First World War, yet there are no records explaining the motives, background, or outcome of the disappearances. Local legend, pieced together from oral histories, suggests the hollow mass was a ritual of selection. 6 participants taken, 1 left to bear witness, much like the 1991 pattern. Some accounts mention children being involved. Others speak of an older figure, called simply the warden, who directed the events. Nothing in official records confirms these claims, yet the coincidences are undeniable. 6 taken, 1 left, a circle of stones, the presence of a central figure, ritual markings on surrounding trees and walls. Detective Holt, reviewing the archives in 1991, wrote in his notes, "Hollow mass, 1919 matches 1991, incidents in every observable parameter. Spatial formation, number of subjects, witness accounts, symbols. This is not coincidence. This is repetition." Analysis of the 1919 site, now overgrown, revealed remnants of stone circles still intact, faint depressions where earth had been dug, and fragments of ash, tested decades later to contain traces of human bone. Witness statements from descendants of 1919 victims suggest the hollow mass was remembered only in whispers. A man named Arthur Pritchard, then a child of 7, recalled in a 1960 interview, "I saw them take my sister and cousin, 6 of them, moving silently in a ring. The one at the back watched me the whole time. I ran, but I could feel it following me. I didn't speak for years." Every detail mirrors the 1991 events. 6 removed, 1 left behind, symbols etched into wood and stone, whispered names in the dark, lights moving through the trees. The hollow mass of 1919 remained officially unsolved. No charges were filed, no suspect ever named. And yet the warden appears again, in the documents, in witness accounts, and in Detective Holt's recovered notes. A presence directing the selection, ensuring the pattern continued, generation after generation. When Holt connected the 1919 hollow mass to the 1991 murders, the full weight of the case became clear. Black Hollow was not just a location. It was a repeating system, a cycle of disappearance, ritual, and remembrance stretching back at least 72 years, possibly centuries. And in the mid-1990s, forensic review of the Chamber of Ash confirmed what Holt had long suspected. The ashes recovered in 1991 contained traces of chemical composition, consistent with burned remains from multiple periods, some as old as 1919. The hollow mass had never truly ended. It had waited. And when 1991 came, it had resumed. Following the archival research into the hollow mass of 1919, Detective Holt and his team focused on the surrounding terrain, the slopes, woods, and fields that had been overlooked for decades. Satellite surveys were unavailable in 1991, so they relied on ground-penetrating radar and careful physical searches. What they found changed the course of the investigation. In a clearing near the northern edge of the hollow, beneath a thin layer of earth and moss, the radar detected multiple anomalies. Excavation revealed shallow depressions, each roughly 6 feet in length. The soil was unusually compacted, yet the surface appeared untouched. No markers, no headstones, no signs of traditional burial. only the faint outline of human forms. Initial forensic analysis of the soil showed organic remains, teeth fragments, small bone shards, hair, burned and interred over successive decades. The patterns matched the chamber of ash, 6 in a ring, 1 left apart, the center undisturbed. The rings were repeated at 4 separate locations within a half-mile radius. Experts noted the precision of the layout. The same formation seen in 1919, mirrored in 1991. The circle was exact, not random, not improvised. One excavation site, later designated Site C, yielded the most disturbing find. Beneath the topsoil, the team uncovered a wooden post, similar in size and design to the one in the chamber of ash. Embedded into it were small metal plates, each engraved with initials matching known victims. T.R. Thomas Ridley, 1919s. E.K. Eleanor Kestrel, 1919 A.C. Anna Croft, 1991 E.C. Edwin Croft, 1991. The engravings were precise, deliberate, consistent with previous ritual objects recovered at the chamber. Investigators began cross-referencing soil composition, ash remnants, and fragments from the graves. Carbon dating confirmed multiple layers. One layer from 1919, another from 1965, and the topmost layer dating to 1991. Each layer contained small tokens, rusted keys, pieces of cloth, or personal items belonging to the victims. One artifact, recovered from the 1965 layer, bore the same symbol later found on bones at the pit in 1991, the spiral crossed by a single vertical line. Local folklore offered additional context. Longtime residents whispered of children being drawn to the hollow, lights flickering in the trees, and soft calls coming from beneath the earth. These accounts, previously dismissed as superstition, now aligned with physical evidence. Every pattern, 6 removed, 1 left, circle formation, warden figure, persisted across decades. Site D, the final excavation of the series, revealed a shallow pit containing fragments of clothing and personal effects. Among them, a child's shoe, heavily worn, a rusted post with initials carved into it, charred parchment with a single phrase in faded ink. The warden watches. Forensic teams confirmed that the clothing belonged to both adult and child victims from 1919 and 1991, suggesting that the same ritual site had been used repeatedly, unchanged. Detective Holt's final notes on the unmarked graves describe the chilling realization. The pattern is complete. 6 are taken. 1 is left to witness. The cycle repeats. Every generation, without exception, the hollow does not forget. The unmarked graves confirmed what investigators had long suspected. Black Hollow was more than a village, more than a clearing, more than a pit. It was a system of ritual continuity, meticulously maintained over decades, with one figure, the warden, ensuring the cycle never faltered. And even now, as the woods regrow and the surface appears calm, the earth beneath hides its memory, waiting for the next generation to enter the hollow. Following the discovery of the unmarked graves, Detective Holt and a small team of constables conducted nighttime surveillance around Black Hollow. Their goal was to monitor any unexplained activity, lights, sounds, movement, and determine if the ritual pattern had continued in 1991. Faint sound of boots on frost-covered leaves, distant low-wind hum. The first observation occurred on April 12th. At 11:42 p.m., P.C. Latham reported seeing a faint, flickering light moving through the tree line, roughly 200 meters from the Croft property. The movement was slow, deliberate, and circular. echoing descriptions from witnesses and historical records. Latham's notes indicate that the light appeared to pause at intervals, as if observing something invisible in the darkness. Another officer, P.C. Turner, recorded audible phenomena during the same night. Using a directional microphone, Turner captured whispers too faint to be understood, but clearly human in cadence and pitch. The voices spoke names: Anna, Edwin, Margaret, all of which corresponded to known victims. Long pause, faint sound of snapping twigs, subtle heartbeat-like pulse under static. Over subsequent nights, multiple observations were logged, lights moving in repeating arcs. 6 distinct knocks, echoing from within the hollow shadows of figures, observed peripherally, disappearing when approached. Distinct cold patches along the forest floor, felt by officers even when ambient temperature remained steady. Each phenomenon matched the pattern of the Chamber of Ash and the hollow mass of 1919. Soft rustling intensifies, distant faint hum of machinery-like vibration. Perhaps the most unsettling account came from Margaret Ellison, recorded on April 18th. She described walking near the old church at 10:30 p.m. when she noticed 6 small lights forming a ring in the clearing. The 7th figure, larger, stationary, remained outside the circle. Ellison later recalled, "The lights weren't lanterns. They didn't cast shadows. They breathed with the rhythm of the hollow. And the one outside the circle, it knew I was watching." The surveillance team attempted to capture photographic evidence. Cameras revealed only faint blurs of motion, often obscured by natural fog and low light conditions. Thermal imaging occasionally detected 2 separate heat signatures, one corresponding to a human figure walking along the perimeter, another, larger, stationary figure, impossible to identify definitively. Forensic analysis later concluded that some phenomena could not be explained by natural causes. Repeated knocks aligned perfectly with historical accounts. Whispers contained words in Old English, matching inscriptions on recovered artifacts. Footprints appeared in circular patterns, then vanished without trace. The observations suggested one terrifying conclusion: the ritual was still active, even 72 years after the hollow mass. Holt's private notes from the surveillance period reflect his growing unease. The hollow records its own history. Each disappearance, each ritual, each circle is precise. We are outsiders. We observe, but we cannot interfere. It waits for its cycle to complete. The echoes in the woods were more than sound or light. They were repetition, memory, and warning. And as the nights grew longer in April 1991, officers began to suspect the hollow itself was watching, observing patterns, ensuring the cycle remained unbroken. By late April 1991, Detective Holt and his team had pieced together more than a decade of local records, witness statements, and archaeological evidence. The Chamber of Ash, the unmarked graves, the 6 knocks in the woods, all pointed to a ritual structure that had persisted across generations. Holt called it, in his private notes, simply, the cycle. The first breakthrough came from a meticulous review of the recovered artifacts. The repeated pattern, 6 taken, 1 left, was not arbitrary. Each site followed a mathematical alignment with the landscape. 6 peripheral markers, often stones or trees. A central point, the post, the warden's position, alignment to cardinal directions, or local landmarks such as the old church steeple or the river bend. The configuration ensured that each act could be repeated with precision. allowing the ritual to persist without deviation over decades. Holt's team discovered that the ritual followed a strict timing sequence tied to lunar phases. Witness accounts confirmed. Activity peaked during the new moon. 6 steps or knocks corresponded to the cycle of the moon. The one left behind always returned home, often reporting sounds, lights, and whispers consistent with the ritual's movements. The warden, always one figure apart, maintained control, ensuring the next iteration of the cycle would unfold exactly as it had for decades. Forensic evidence confirmed the deliberate nature of the ritual. Ash layers corresponded to sequential removals of victims' tokens left behind. Keys, small personal items, engraved plates, functioned as markers of the cycle. Each generation's participants were placed in the same spatial positions as their predecessors, Holt's private notes state. The cycle is repeatable, measurable, and encoded in the land itself. Each victim, each marker, each circle, all reinforce its continuity. The Hollow does not forget, and neither do its followers. The team also uncovered historical records from 1938 and 1965, confirming earlier iterations of the ritual. Victims' disappearances aligned with the same lunar pattern, always 6 in number, 1 left behind. Even the photographs recovered from the metal box in the Chamber of Ash confirmed it visually. 6 individuals in a ring, 1 figure observing, repeated across decades. For the first time, it became clear. The Hollow's ritual was not a series of isolated events. It was a deliberate, generational practice, sustained over 70 years, possibly longer. By May 1991, Detective Holt had mapped every known site connected to the Hollow: the Chamber of Ash Site C, Site D, and the remaining unmarked graves. The Croft property, remnants of the 1919 Hollow mass clearing. Each point corresponded to a node in the Hollow's network. Each node had been used repeatedly, in strict order, maintaining the cycle's integrity. Holt's notes on the final night of observation read, "The warden directs, the cycle continues. 6 are chosen, 1 witnesses, and it will repeat, unbroken, until something or someone interrupts it." That night, faint lights were recorded moving between the nodes, 6 points of illumination. 1 figure stationary at the center of the clearing. The ritual, as it had for decades, had resumed. The Hollow's secret was no longer theory. The ritual was real, structured, and ongoing. And for those left behind, the warden's presence was always close, watching, waiting, recording. By revealing the structure, timing, and mechanics of the ritual, Holt understood something essential. The Black Hollow murders were not crimes in the traditional sense. They were continuations of a system older than living memory, executed across generations, leaving only 1 witness to recount the cycle for the next iteration. In every iteration of the Hollow's ritual, 1 individual was always left behind, the witness. In 1991, that person was Eleanor Croft, age 28. She survived the night of April 18th, reporting events that would later become crucial to understanding the Hollow's cycle. Eleanor's testimony was recorded over a series of interviews, each one painstakingly cross-referenced with witness statements, surveillance logs, and forensic evidence. Eleanor described walking near the clearing when the ritual began. 6 figures emerged, moving silently in a circle. Each step, each motion was deliberate, the same as historical accounts from 1919, 1965, and even the Chamber of Ash excavation in 1991. She recounted, "They didn't speak. They just moved. I counted them, 6. And then I saw the one at the center, the warden. He watched me. It was like he could see everything I was thinking. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I just watched. Her experience mirrors the historical pattern. 6 removed, 1 left. But what made Eleanor's account unique were the sounds and whispers she heard. She reported hearing names, her own, her family's, even names she had never known. Words in Old English, phrases repeating in an unfamiliar cadence. She later recalled, "It felt like the hollow itself was reading me, learning me, each name a thread I couldn't escape." Surveillance logs from the night confirm Eleanor's testimony. 6 heat signatures moved in a circular formation. 1 stationary signature remained at the center. The circle's motion aligned with previous hollow rituals and the lunar cycle. Her role as the witness ensured the continuity of the cycle. She would recount the events, inadvertently maintaining the hollow's memory for the next generation. Eleanor's psychological state deteriorated over the following weeks. She reported dreams of the 6 figures, of being trapped in circles that stretched endlessly, and of a presence observing her from the shadows. Detective Holt noted in his journal, "The witness bears the weight of the hollow. Memory becomes ritual. Observation becomes participation. Eleanor's survival is the mechanism by which the Isis Stits cycle endures." Years later, Eleanor described the final moment she saw the warden. "He didn't move, but I knew he was there, watching, waiting, counting. I didn't understand then, but I realize now. It isn't just a ritual, it's a record, and I was part of it." Long pause, ambient night sounds, wind fades. The testimony of the last witness bridges the past and present. Through her eyes, investigators confirmed the hollow's pattern, its precision, and its persistence across generations. And for Eleanor, as for all witnesses before her, the truth was inescapable. The hollow never forgets. It watches, it waits, and it will act again. In May of 1991, Detective Holt received a tip from a retired archivist who had been cataloging old parish records. Hidden behind a false panel in the Croft family attic, they found a small, leather-bound ledger, heavily worn, pages yellowed with age. It was the first direct link to the figure referred to across decades as the warden. The ledger contained meticulous entries, each dated, numbered, and coded. They spanned nearly a century, from 1895 to 1991. Every entry listed 6 individuals, their age, occupation, and location. The 7th entry, always blank, indicated the witness left behind to record the event. Some entries included small sketches, circles and arcs representing the ritual site, symbols matching those found on stones and wooden posts. Lines tracing movements through the hollow Holt noted in his journal. The warden did not leave room for error. Each action recorded, each participant catalogued. The ritual is a system, precise, deliberate, perpetual. Among the ledger's more disturbing features were notations of unexpected events, absences, accidents, and escape attempts, names erased and replaced, corrections marked with small crosses. It became clear the warden maintained the cycle with brutal efficiency, ensuring that deviations were corrected or erased from memory. One passage, dated 1965, described a failed iteration. 6 taken, 1 escaped. The record must be corrected, ritual repeated, memory preserved. All accounted. The ledger confirmed what investigators had feared. The hollow's cycle had been maintained for decades, possibly centuries, and the warden had deliberately ensured its survival through meticulous documentation. Detective Holt cross-referenced ledger entries with unmarked graves, witness statements, and historical records. Every documented disappearance matched a ledger entry. The placement of ash, tokens, and posts matched sketches in the book. Symbols, lunar timing, and six-step sequences were consistent across every generation. The ledger proved one terrifying truth. Black Hollow's murders were systematic, repeatable, and institutionalized within a secret framework of observation and record-keeping. Perhaps the most chilling discovery came from the final pages of the ledger. The last entry, dated April 1991, listed 6 names, victims of the most recent Hollow ritual, with the 7th line blank. Below it, a single phrase was scrawled in shaky ink. Cycle continues. One must witness. One must remember. The Hollow endures. The hidden ledger provided investigators with proof beyond witness testimony or circumstantial evidence. The Hollow was not an accident, not a series of tragedies. It was a calculated generational system, executed and observed by a figure known only as the Warden, who ensured the cycle's precision and continuity. Wind dies down, faint sound of paper closing, silence for several seconds. And as the team left the Croft attic that day, Holt noted quietly, "The ledger does not lie. It records the truth of the Hollow, and in its pages, the past and present are intertwined. Its next cycle is already prepared." Every piece of evidence, the chamber of ash, the unmarked graves, the witness testimonies, the hidden ledger, pointed to a single unavoidable truth. The Black Hollow murders were orchestrated by a figure known only as the Warden. And yet, no one had ever seen the Warden directly. In 1991, Detective Holt attempted to trace the figure's identity, following every possible lead. Parish records, old census data, witness descriptions, even local folklore. The result was always the same: a shadow without a face, a presence defined by action rather than appearance. Several witnesses claimed glimpses, never fully formed, of a tall, silent figure at the edge of the woods, always standing apart from the circle of 6, always observing, never intervening. Clad in garments indistinct in style and period, suggesting longevity beyond human expectation. One local farmer, recalling events from the early 1960s, said, "I saw him once, standing by the old stone. Didn't move, didn't speak. I thought he was part of a dream, but the field, the 6 holes, they weren't dream." Pause. Faint metallic clink, distant wind gusts. Attempts to identify the Warden via photographs, sketches, or security footage in 1991 yielded nothing. Cameras picked up shapes, shadows, heat signatures, but the figure remained indistinct. Surveillance logs noted that whenever officers approached too closely, the figure disappeared or blended seamlessly with darkness. The Warden was both observer and participant, enforcing the ritual while remaining unseen. Holt's journal contains a chilling reflection. The Warden is not merely human, or perhaps they are human, but bound to a system beyond comprehension. Every cycle, every generation, they ensure continuity. Observation itself is the act of ritual. The Hollow does not forget, and neither does the Warden. A review of the hidden ledger suggested the Warden may live across multiple decades, possibly through succession, training, or some unknown mechanism of inheritance. Entries spanning the 20th century hint at names, initials, and notes that cannot be directly connected to any one individual known to authorities. The ledger implies a lineage, a keeper of the Hollow, entrusted with maintaining its cycle. And the final notation from 1991 reinforces it. Cycle continues. Warden observes. One remains to see. Witnesses continue to describe the warden as simultaneously present and absent, a figure at the boundary of perception, always watching, never intervening in the physical sense, ensuring the ritual's precision and the hollow's secrecy. One of Holt's team, reviewing surveillance tapes decades later, noted, "The warden is the system, and the system endures." Wind dies down, faint echo of footsteps retreating, silence for several seconds. In the hollow, the warden remains unseen, but in every circle, in every ritual, in every generation, the warden's presence is undeniable, and for those left behind, the witnesses, the certainty remains. They are being watched, and the hollow is always counting. By the end of April 1991, Detective Holt and his team had gathered every piece of evidence, witness statements, the hidden ledger, unmarked graves, and surveillance data. And yet, the hollow continued its cycle. On the night of April 28th, the culmination of the 1991 ritual unfolded, the final circle of that generation. Witnesses describe arriving at the clearing, noticing 6 figures moving in perfect formation. The 7th figure, Eleanor Croft, remained outside, frozen in observation. According to recordings, the 6 moved with deliberate precision, stepping in time with an unseen rhythm. Each step, each gesture mirrored patterns recorded in the ledger, the unmarked graves, and historical hollow mass reports. The warden remained stationary, at the center of the clearing, eyes unseen but felt in every movement, every pause. One witness recalled, "It wasn't just watching, it was expecting. It knew what each of them would do, where they would stand, and we were all part of it." The 6 participants were removed sequentially. No struggle, no cries. Only the faint shimmer of light surrounding them as they were guided out of sight. Eleanor Croft, the last witness, described the experience as simultaneously terrifying and methodical. They stepped into the lights and vanished. The warden didn't touch them, but the hollow took them. And then it was just me, alone, watching. Long pause, distant faint echo of 6 knocks. Soft wind. After the final removal, the clearing was empty except for Eleanor and the warden's figure. The ritual's geometric perfection remained. 6 points, 1 central observer, no deviation. The earth bore the marks of movement. Faint indentations, ash residue, and carefully placed markers, all consistent with decades of prior rituals. Pause. Faint sound of a distant bell. Soft. Rustle of leaves. Detective Holt's private notes describe the final observation. The cycle is complete. 6 are gone. 1 remains. The hollow records the event, ensuring continuity. The warden does not move, does not intervene, but the order is preserved. We are outsiders. We can watch, but we cannot alter it. For Eleanor, the experience left an indelible mark. She carried the memory of the 6 lights and the silent figure at the center. She recounted the feeling of inescapable observation, as if the hollow itself were aware of her thoughts, and she understood, with chilling clarity, that the ritual was not complete until the cycle was documented, remembered, and recounted. The final circle confirmed everything the investigation had suggested. The hollow's rituals were precise, deliberate, and repeated. The warden ensured continuity without direct interference. One witness was always left to maintain the memory and facilitate the next cycle, and while the 6 were removed, never to return, the hollow remained. Eternal. waiting for the next generation. After the final circle of April 1991, the Hollow did not fall silent. Detective Holt and his team documented the evidence, interviewed Eleanor Croft repeatedly, and catalogued the remains recovered from the unmarked graves and the Chamber of Ash. Yet the investigation revealed something unexpected. The Hollow was not confined to the past. Eleanor, the last witness, described recurring visions months after the events, shadows moving in the trees near her home, lights flickering in the distance on nights of the new moon, the persistent feeling of being watched by a presence she could neither see nor name. She understood the terrifying truth. The cycle did not end with the removal of the six. It endured, encoded into the Hollow itself, waiting for the next iteration. Holt's final report, never made public, concluded, Black Hollow is not a series of isolated events. It is a system, self-sustaining, generational, and persistent. Evidence suggests it will continue until interrupted by forces unknown. The warden remains unseen, the cycle unbroken. Those left to witness carry the burden, ensuring the Hollow's memory survives. Local residents reported small but unusual occurrences, unexplained lights in the forest, sounds of footsteps where none should exist. Children recounted visions similar to historical Hollow Mass accounts. Each incident suggested that the Hollow's influence extended beyond direct participation, affecting anyone who entered its domain. Historians reviewing the hidden ledger and archival records noted the repeated patterns on disappearance, ritual, and observation. The conclusion was chilling. The Hollow's cycle had persisted for decades. The warden had maintained continuity. The next generation of the cycle was already prepared, awaiting 6 participants and 1 witness, and no one could predict when or how it would act again. For Eleanor, and for every witness before her, the memory of the Hollow is permanent. And for us, observing from a distance, there is a question that remains. If the Hollow waits, unseen, its warden watching, and the cycle continues, what would you do if you found yourself in the clearing,